Hello everyone. Hi, I'm Ravi Handa from handakafunda.com. And today we are here to primarily talk about what you should do about XAT. Now, CAT is over and I hope it went well for you. But XAT is also a really important exam. It is accepted by a lot of MBA colleges as a parameter to give entry to the aspirants. Now, some of you might be wondering as to how is CAT different from XAT. See, first of all, CAT focuses on some of the key areas such as quant, logical reasoning, data interpretation, verbal ability, and reading comprehension. Now, all these areas are there in XAT also. But there are few things which are extra in XAT. And what are those areas? They are decision making, general knowledge, and essay writing. So these are the three key areas which are essentially different in XAT than CAT. We will deal with what they are a little bit later. Now, for example, just to begin with, I believe you wouldn't have done much for decision making when you were preparing for the CAT exam because it is not actually a part of the CAT exam. So what exactly is decision making? See, in decision making, what happens? You are given a particular set of questions based upon a case study. And then, depending upon the case, you are given some situations and you are asked to take a decision, which is probably the right one in the interest of the business. So these are more or less like case study questions in which you have to make the decision of picking the right choice. And this section is unique only to XAT. In general knowledge, well, general knowledge is pretty much trying to find out how much you know about the world around you. So if you have been following the news, reading the newspapers, it should not be something which is very difficult. And then finally, it is the essay writing portion which comes in handy. Now in essay writing, once your first section of the paper is over, then you are given one more sheet of paper on which you need to write an essay. The topic will be given to you then and there. And then you need to write an essay on it, and that gets evaluated on some of the things like how good is your sentence structure, what is your how much clarity of thought you have about the entire thing, and how do you communicate. Your communication skills are primarily tested via the essay writing route. Another question that we are getting on the hangout is how should you spend the last 1 month preparing for XAT? Now, as you might know, XAT is scheduled on the first Sunday of January, which is roughly a month away, or maybe exactly a month away, since the first Sunday will probably be the 4th of Jan. So what should you do in this last 1 month? Now, it depends. It depends on how much time do you have to prepare. So let's say we are studying for 3 hours a day, then 1.5 hours should go towards decision making, half an hour for GK, and that should probably do the trick. Whatever time is left out of those 3 hours, that should go for revising. And what should you revise? You should revise quant, LR, DI, reading comprehension, the whole lot. Please do not try to learn new concepts or new formulas in this period. See, you already have a lot of new things to learn about. Say, for example, decision making is an absolutely new area that you need to learn about. GK, maybe you have prepared for it for IFT, maybe not. So GK is another new area. Essay writing is something that you have not practiced at all. And that is why I recommend that you need to write at least 10 essays before you actually write it in the exam. See, the last time most of us or most of the aspirants wrote essays were when they were in class 5 or maybe in class 10, but definitely not after class 10. Until and unless you are an English major, then it's a completely different story. Then you don't really need to practice essay writing as well. But for the others, and primarily engineers who are not really good at essays, write 10 essays, the 11th essay will automatically be better than what you have already written. So once again, just to summarize, half of your time should go in towards preparation of decision making, another half an hour for GK, and write 10 essays, and then you can make the best use of the 1 month that is left for XAT. Another question is, what exactly is decision making? As I was saying in the beginning of the hangout, the biggest part of decision making is the kind of questions that get asked. A lot of people don't even know the kind of questions which get asked. They can be broadly classified in the three categories, as you can see on the screen. One is the ethical and moral dilemmas. So a common question could be that a particular situation arises in which maybe if you can bribe one of the client's supervisors or maybe someone at a serious position and get a huge contract, should you do it? The answer in such type of questions, more often than not, or rather always, is doing the right thing. Just ask yourself, as I keep on telling my students, what would Batman do in such a situation? And whatever is the course of action taken by Batman, that should be your answer. See, you will very easily be able to come down to two options from five. And it is those two last options which will make it difficult for you. And how do you pick between the two of them? Just think about it on Batman's course of action, put yourself in Batman's shoes and take a call on that. Another kind of problems which get asked in decision making, the second popular category is the logical problems. Now these are really simple to handle. You will be given some sort of data, some sort of logical constraints in which you need to operate on, and then take a call on what should be done. Making a decision based upon data is a good thing. Why? Because the chances of making an error are really, really low in this. You will have some sort of data. Based upon that data, you can take a call. What is the right course of action? So there will be little confusion in this. So let's say if you have limited amount of time and you cannot really pick which question to attempt and which question not to attempt, I would suggest that you go in for the data-based question, for the question which seems a little bit logical in nature, instead of the ethical and the moral dilemma sort of questions. The third category is situational problems. So maybe you are working for a company, the company is trying to expand into new sectors, and when you are trying to expand into new sectors, you get into conflict with some of your old friends. Actually, this was a question in XAT 2014. What should you do in such a situation? Now, these kind of questions, they check your various personality traits. And once again, it is very important to do the right thing. Now, right thing can be slightly ambiguous, that is it right for my business? Is it right for my friends? Or what would be the ideal thing to do? So once again, put it to the Batman test, as I like to call it. Whatever be the course of action that the Batman would take that and you should be good to go. Then again, another very common confusion that people have with respect to that is what is the importance of the GK section and the essay writing section. So let me clarify that for you. First of all, your GK section marks have no relevance when it comes to your percentile. Your essay, however good it is, however bad it is, even if you have handed an empty paper, it will not have an impact on your percentile. And if it will not have an impact on your percentile, it will not have an impact on you getting a call. But what is your target with respect to that? Are you just trying to get some marks? Are you just trying to get a good fancy scorecard which you can show off? No. What you are trying to do is to get an admission into a good college. And that is where GK becomes important. That is where the essay becomes important. Because what the interview panel at the XLRI does is they look at your GK scores, they look at the kind of essay you have written, and then they quiz you based upon those two parameters in your personal interview. So let's say if you have done badly in GK and you have a good essay, then most probably the panel is going to ask you about GK. On the other hand, if your GK is good and you have written a horrible essay, or you have written something in the essay which is alarming or controversial, or maybe a decision that is slightly hard to defend, then you will get asked on that particular parameter in the final personal interview. So these are the things about which you should be really, really careful of. See, because I remember one of my students, he did really well in XAT, got a 99.5 plus percentile, did badly in GK, goes in for the interview. They ask him a question which was there in the paper, which was, I distinctly remember, that who is the chairman of the planning commission? Now, in case you don't know, the chairman of the planning commission is always the prime minister of the country. So the answer should have been Manmohan Singh. But most of us are aware when it comes to planning commission, we are aware of the Montek Singh Ahluwalia, the other Sardar with the blue turban. So that's what he answered in the personal interview. That is what he answered on the paper itself. And that became a problem. He was disqualified, could not get through XLRI just because of that one question. Because it shows your sincerity that not only you are doing badly in GK, you're not bothered about it as well. You have not even looked at the questions which were asked in the exam before coming to the interview. So such lack of sincerity is a big red flag for the interview panel, and that makes it a problem for the final selection. So if you are just looking at some calls, or let's say if you are planning to score something like an 80 percentile or an 85 percentile, and that is the kind of colleges you are looking at, go ahead. GK as well as essay writing are not important for you. But if you are looking at the top colleges, if you are looking at XLRI, you need to excel in GK, you need to excel in essay writing, and both of them become really important. Now, I also get a lot of questions and a lot of people ask me that what exactly is the exam pattern like? So the paper is essentially divided into two parts. The first part will have 4 sections. The first section will be the verbal and the logical ability, which will have your traditional RC questions and para jumbles and like critical reasoning and a little bit of all that. Section 2, and that has typically somewhere around 28 to 30 questions if you look at past year papers. Second section is typically the decision making section, and I think we have talked about decision making section a lot. And decision making section typically has somewhere around 23 to 25 odd questions. The third section is quantitative aptitude and data interpretation, which has the maximum number of questions, roughly around 30 to 33. So if you look at these 3 sections, the first section, verbal ability and logical ability, corresponds to section 2 of CAT. The third section, quantitative ability and data interpretation, that corresponds to section 1 of CAT. The middle section, which is the decision making section, that is the one which is unique to XAT, and that is the one you need to concentrate on. Again, as a part of the same booklet, you also get something like the general knowledge. You get roughly 20 questions on GK, but as said before, they are not evaluated for your percentile, but for your final selection. Now, when it comes to the second part of it, that is that one sheet of paper that I was mentioning for essay writing, which is there to test your writing ability and your communication skills. Now, some of you might be wondering now, essay writing is something that I haven't really done in a long time. So what should I do for that? Now, there are a few points, few tips that I like to give you. For essay writing, the first thing that you need to do is you need to outline the essay. The essay, before even you pick up a pen and start writing, you should have the entire essay in your mind and then just jot it down. Because if you are going to take it in a flow sort of a manner that I'll write it and edit it later, that is not going to work here, because you will not be typing out the essay. You will be writing it with a pen and paper. And if you make too many scratch marks or too many edits, it's going to reflect very poorly on you. How can you develop essay writing abilities? As I said before, write at least 10 essays before the exam, and if possible, read 100 essays before the exam. You can find a lot of them on the net. We do have a course for it. You can look at that as well. But until and unless you actually sit down and write those 10 essays, it will be very difficult for you to do well in the exam. Also, what happens in most of the essays is your first impression matters a lot. So whatever is there in your first para, that should set the tone for the rest of the essay. So keep that in mind when you're writing the essay, that, okay, this is the point that I want to get to. These are the ideas that I want to communicate. A brief summary or a good introduction to what you are going to say should be there in the first paragraph, so that you can grab the attention of the reader. And I guess that is pretty much it for today, guys. Slightly shorter session for a hangout, but I'll see you again on the 23rd of December. We'll have another one of these sessions, and I hope you join us then also. Thank you. This is Ravi Handa from Handa Ka Fanda signing off. Bye-bye.